Welcome to the latest episode of Gryphon Manor. Now, in the last episode, I spent some time talking about the changes I've made in the mod mix and my plans and designs for the nearby village of Andover. However, even as I worked on those plans, I was already thinking about the next phase of work on the Manor estate, and that is to dig out the workshop and storage levels. Now, of course, the design of these levels and the process of making them a reality is heavily influenced by the fact that I'm playing modded Minecraft. Now, back in my vanilla days, the number of processing stations that I needed or even wanted was pretty limited, and they didn't take up much space, so I could carve out and complete the entire workshop in an hour or two, tops. But now I'm playing modded Minecraft, and the facilities for crafting and processing food, materials, and gears jump by a couple of orders of magnitude, and that's just the stuff I know about. I still have much to learn, and so I needed to be careful to leave plenty of room for growth in my plans. And so I need to carve out an entire factory floor from within the living rock, and to furnish it with power and at least the tools that I know about, and then add the rest later as I figure it all out. That's part of the fun of it. I know that in the last episode I said that I might have to limit myself to just the bits that I need immediately, and I might still have to call a stop to the work at some point if things run long, but I really do want to just get it all done in a single go, and then maybe I can get to the fun bits. So that brings me to the goals for this episode. So first and foremost, I need to carve out and finish a large working space to, work in. And I have some definite ideas of what will go in there based on what I've traditionally added in my vanilla games and what I've learned of the Create and Immersive Engineering mod so far. However, I strongly suspect that no matter how much space I carve out and prepare now, it will eventually turn out to not be enough. But if that does turn out to be the case, I will most likely be pretty happy with how things are going, and so returning to the digging will not be a huge deal. Though, I guess that will probably depend on how I feel about digging after this phase of the project. I might have a very different outlook at that point. The theme of this world is increasingly steampunkish, and with both the Create and Immersive Engineering mods adding flavor to the kind of world I want to build, I know that I'll need a lot of iron, and coal for that matter. The Create Deco mod brings cast iron to the mix, and the Immersive Engineering mod brings steel, and there are a lot of cool things I can build with those materials. So what I envision is a kind of 19th century factory space with something like wrought iron catwalks and copper and brass fittings everywhere, and of course plenty of lanterns. Now that is going to require a small mountain of iron, so I need to start hoarding all the iron I can get my hands on now, but I will iron out the details in that later, and for now I will just forge ahead. So the workshop is where I'll be spending a lot of time, especially between episodes, so I will need to make sure that the space is secure from wandering beasties, traveling salespersons, tax collectors, and other unwelcome guests. Unfortunately, Endermen are and always will be a problem, as they have a tendency to spawn and then wander or teleport far and wide. But at the very least, I want to secure the space from creepers, zombies, and skeletons, and all the other usual Minecraft riffraff. Now, I'm not sure what I can reasonably do to keep pillagers out of my zone, but that's pretty much a problem for the surface of the estate. Down here near the bedrock layers, they're not really a concern. Speaking of Endermen, I've spiced things up by adding the Enderman Overhaul mod, which, not surprisingly, overhauls the Enderman. Now, I've deliberately not read much about the mod, though I did read enough to come to the conclusion that it might be a nice and interesting addition. Now, while I was at it, I added the Creeper Overhaul mod as well, and I may come to regret these additions at some point in the future, but for now, I'm committed to taking them on and dealing with the consequences. And those are the goals for this episode. Now, it doesn't make much of a list, but it represents a ton of work I need to do. But before I start removing blocks, it's important to have a plan. And if you've seen any of my previous episodes, you know that I don't do squat without some kind of plan. Sometimes I even come up with a plan to come up with the plan. Now, this is the current design for the workshop and storage levels. Now, there are actually 2 levels designated for this, but I won't be adding much of a floor to the upper level, so the entire space should be wide open, both vertically and horizontally. Now, this should really give me a lot of space for whatever craziness I can imagine. The elevator opens up to the south, so it opens up to the bottom portion of this diagram. Now, the space immediately around the elevator will be left open to act as a kind of foyer to the space, and that will be true for almost all the other underground levels as well. On this level, the main storage network will exist just outside of the open space. Now I'm using the storage drawers mod, and I've color-coded the storage as shown in the diagram. The red drawers will contain the different kinds of stone blocks, as well as the various ores, gems, and processed metals, and all of the miscellaneous crafting bits. The green drawers will house all of my logs, wood, saplings, plants, flowers, and other natural bits that are not necessarily used in crafting. The blue drawers will contain furnishings and hardware, including all the usual building supplies. That includes fences, doors, redstone components, machine parts, and that kind of stuff. Finally, the yellow drawers will store blocks of dirt, gravel, sand, clay, and other soil types. The next layer outward and the bulk of the level will be devoted to processing, crafting, and manufacturing. Now you can see that I've already designated some spaces based on my experience up to this point, but I've left most of the spaces designated as TBD, or to be determined, for future expansion. Where possible, I've tried to group related functions near each other, and I've tried to group them around the storage areas that would contain the materials most useful for those functions. Now, it's a tricky business, as the complexities of many recipes make it virtually impossible to fully optimize storage and manufacturing in conjunction with each other. So I took a shot at it, and I'm certain that the layout will get altered a little bit once things are set in place and I get to actually test my design with actual use. But I'm getting a little ahead of myself there, as I only plan to excavate and build out this space in this episode, and that's more than enough to keep me busy. Finally, I've designated 4 locations on the very outer edge of the levels for power production. Now, I put them way the hell out there because of my experience of crate water wheels in the Gryphon Hall series, where large numbers of working water wheels brought my system to its knees. Now, grouping the water wheels into smaller groups and placing those groups as far away from each other as possible may help with this, and if I'm lucky, it'll eliminate the problem altogether. However, I also have the Create Diesel Generators mod, and while I'll be starting with water wheels, I plan to eventually supplement and possibly replace those with diesel generators. And of course, I now have immersive engineering in the mix, and it has its own power sources and methods of transmission. And since I'm mixing it all together with the Create mod, I also have the Create Crafts and Additions mod, which allows me to integrate and convert between the 2 different energy types. Now, if I can avoid performance issues, I think there's some really exciting stuff to learn and do in this space, and I'm very much looking forward to that. In fact, I'm already feeling increasingly empowered. I've started the actual work, and I've made my first batch of cast iron catwalks. Now, I really do like how they look and work, but it's pretty clear at this point that I'm going to need an insane amount of iron to build out this project to the current design. Now, I'm guessing that I'll need about 1,000 iron ingots, and quite possibly more than that. Luckily, I've built an airship, and with the mapping data I compiled when I explored outwards, 2.5 kilometers, I should be able to spot the high altitude areas where iron will be most plentiful, and so I can kind of fly in, do a bit of serious resource mining, and then fly back. It might take a flight, or 2, or more, if I'm to get enough iron to see this thing through. It's becoming increasingly clear to me that just mining alone may not be enough to meet all my iron intake needs. Now, the Create mod offers a method to effectively farm iron by washing gravel. So I'll take advantage of the power I'm bringing in from the windmill and use it to drive some fans. Now, I'll use some of those to provide washing to produce iron from the gravel, but I'll also use some to provide smelting without the need for coal, as I'm spending a non-trivial amount of time chopping down trees and producing charcoal for all the various bits of smelting and processing that I frequently need. So I've built a temporary set of stations for smelting and washing. I use dirt blocks since I already have a bunch and not much need for it at the moment. All the stations are working as designed, and in the case of the smelting, that's absolutely great. However, even though the washing is working as it was designed, I recover, on average, about 8 iron nuggets for every full stack of gravel that I wash, which means that I could work through all the gravel I have available and produce probably only 50 to 100 extra iron ingots, which is not going to be nearly enough iron and will leave me with 0 gravel. And gravel's incredibly useful stuff in Minecraft, so it's clear that I need to up my game. I had not really planned to take things this far in terms of automation, at least not at this early stage, but it's clear to me that manually processing gravel to get iron will take me months in real life, and therefore I need to create a fully automated rig where I'm generating cobblestone and sending at least some of that material to a millstone where it's ground into gravel and then deposited onto a conveyor and then washed while traveling down that conveyor, with any flint or iron produced being automatically added to my current supply. Now this is the temporary rig I built. Again, I use dirt as this is all highly temporary, but at the moment I'm producing 5 cobblestone blocks at a time, and the output of the millstone at its current speed is ultimately resulting in about 20 iron ingots per hour, which doesn't sound like a lot, but since it's fully automated, that's 20 iron ingots that I had to put zero effort into producing, and since it's running 24/7, it's chugging along even while I'm out excavating, farming resources, eating lunch, or even sleeping. Now, I'll probably still need to do some additional mining runs to fully meet my needs, but I think this will get me through this phase. One of my goals for this phase is to make sure that the area is secure from hostile mobs. But apparently, one or more of the chunks in this space are slime chunks, which is to say that even if I have this place lit up like Miami in the summer, slimes can and will, and already have, spawn in here and therefore need to be taken care of. In the past, I've been perfectly happy to have this happen because it then allows me to practically farm slime balls for crafting purposes such as sticky pistons and the like. However, the Create mod has given me recipes for crafting my own slime balls, and these artificial slime balls are exactly the same thing as the real deal. So why bother putting up with the random slimes popping in and goobering up the place? But obviously, lighting alone won't stop them. Luckily, one of the mods in this mix is the Magnum Torch mod, which allows me to craft and plant special torches that will prevent different kinds of mobs from spawning depending on the exact torch type. Now, I placed one of these within the walls of the elevator shaft, and it seems to be working. Or at least I've been slime free for the past couple hours since I planted the torch. Unfortunately, the torch has a limited radius, and I've seen all sorts of other bad neighbors spawn around the edges of these levels, so I will supplement this first torch with 4 more at the 4 corners of these levels, and that should go a long ways toward keeping things quiet and fairly safe. Now, I say fairly safe because of the nature of Endermen, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, and so I've seen more than a few bouncing around these levels and the rest of the base. Just a side note, as I mentioned earlier, I'm running the Enderman Overhaul mod, and I've noticed that at least one of the new Enderman types are able to carry around natural stone instead of, or in addition to, blocks of dirt, gravel, or clay. Now, I've not caught up to one of these yet, but they are leaving all sorts of natural stone blocks around the estate, so I'll need to teach them to clean up after themselves, just as my mom did with me, but with a bit less restraint. As I've been working on this phase of the project, I found a happy marriage between several mods that's allowing me to increase the speed of the digging by at least an order of magnitude, though the increase in digging speed is really putting pressure on my iron supply, so I will probably need to rely mostly on resource runs and let the automated stuff supplement that instead of the other way around. It all kind of developed organically like this. Now, in my vanilla worlds, I typically use stone tools for 99% of my work, as the material is practically free, so the only real cost is time. Now, trying to do the bulk of my work with better tools in vanilla has historically failed because I needed the iron and the diamonds for other stuff. And after switching to iron or diamond tools, I found that after a short while, I'm spending a disproportionate amount of my time looking for iron and diamonds instead of what I really need or wanted to be doing. But now I'm in modded Minecraft, and so that paradigm is completely shattered, and I've established a new one. But it was a gradual process. It all started with the Mineral Chance mod, which basically watches over me when I'm digging any of the natural stone types. And each time I mine one of these blocks in the overworld, there's a 2% chance that it'll drop a random ore or gem, including iron and gold nuggets, redstone dust, lapis, emeralds, or diamonds. Now, I have an insane amount of digging to do, and I've already been at it for a while, and so I noticed that I had accumulated a small stack of diamonds. Not enough to build a building out of, but certainly enough to make some nice armor and quite possibly switch to diamond tools. So I did. Now without enchanting, I found that as long as I kept mining natural stone blocks of any type, I was definitely finding enough diamonds to support always using a diamond pickaxe, no problem. However, the other tools were not cost effective, as I was obviously not mining stone blocks with them, and so while I was wearing them out, they were using up my little diamond surplus without actually replenishing it. So I stayed with diamond for my pickaxes and stone for everything else. Now thanks to another mod, Easy Anvils, this new approach went even further because the mod allows me to repeatedly upgrade or repair an item on the anvil without increasing the cost of future repairs or upgrades. So if you think about the vanilla anvil behavior, each time you upgrade or repair an enchanted item, the cost for the next repair goes up radically, and after a few repairs, the cost is so high that the anvil reports it's too expensive, even if you would otherwise have enough experience for the operation. And the enchanted weapon, tool, or armor that you've worked so hard to create is now on death row and will eventually wear out, and there's not a damn thing you can do about it. But with Easy Anvils, I can just keep repairing my item because the cost of the repair remains constant and low, and so I can effectively keep the item working forever. Now this got me thinking about repairs and upgrades in a way that I've never had to think about it before, because now I have options that I never had before. And one of those is the realization that it's easier and cheaper to repair any tool with a duplicate tool of the same type than to try and repair it with just materials alone. For example, if your diamond pickaxe is on death's door, you will need 4 diamonds to fully repair it. However, you could just create a new diamond pickaxe using just 3 diamonds and then repair your enchanted pickaxe with the new one and get a fully restored enchanted diamond pickaxe for less diamonds and just 2 experience levels. Now the savings is even higher for something like, say, a shovel, where you would normally need 4 diamonds for a full 99% repair, but only a single diamond to repair with a duplicate unenchanted diamond shovel. So obviously, I switched to doing that and things were going great. But things got even better because of another mod, Easy Magic. This mod changes the behavior of the enchanting table in a few key ways, and one of those is to essentially allow me to reset the choices on the enchanting table at the cost of 1 lapis and 5 experience points. Not experience levels, but experience points, and that's a big distinction because if you want to essentially reset the enchanting table in the vanilla context, you would need to enchant something, which would require at a minimum 1 lapis and 1 full experience level, and then you would have an enchanted doodad that you didn't necessarily want. Now using this reset provided by the Easy Magic mod, I can now scan the choices and, if I don't like them, I can reset it, all at a fraction of the experience cost and without accumulating a bunch of enchanted junk that I either have to store or disenchant to try to get some of that experience back. With this lower reset cost, it was then easier for me to blow through options until I arrived with one that I really wanted. Now basically it gives me an affordable way to cherry pick enchantments. But to be clear, affordable's not really cheap, it's just cheap enough to make it worth my while. This then brings me to another feature of the Easy Anvils mod, which is that it removes the notion that something is, and I'm using air quotes here, too expensive to enchant. Now if, for example, you wanted to create a netherite sword with sharpness 5, leech 3 from the ensorcelation mod, fire aspect 2, looting 3, unbreaking 3, mending, soulbound also from the ensorcelation, and vorpal 3, which does exactly what you probably think it does and also comes from ensorcelation. Adding those last few enchantments would require a sizable chunk of levels of experience, something in the neighborhood of the mid to high 40s, and normally the game would say that this is too expensive and not allow you to proceed, even if you actually have the levels. However, I can now go as high as needed, and in fact, this is exactly what I've done. In fact, the sword I just described in my example is the actual sword I use in the game. I even gave it a name, Glamdring, and I guess I've developed a particular habit of naming things in Minecraft, and this one has a nice ring to it. And that's all I have to say on that. Now, keeping all of that in mind, I have 2 diamond picks that I use. The first is for the bulk of my digging, and it includes efficiency 4, unbreaking 3, fortune 3, soulbound, and mending, and last but certainly not least, Excavating, which is another enchantment from Ensorcelation that enables me to mine 9 blocks in a 3x3 grid at a single go, instead of the usual 1 block at a time. And this lets me hollow out space even faster than I could in creative mode. And the second pick is the exact same thing, but without the excavating, which makes it more useful for delicate or precision mining. And voila, there you have it. Now, I've created a large and very open manufacturing space that is almost completely monster-free, and this is about as far as I got in the Gryphon Hall series before I wound up bricking that world. But I think what I've achieved in this series has already surpassed what I accomplished there, at least in terms of quality and design. Now, this particular effort kinda sorta reminds me of the mines of Moria, except that it's infinitely better lit and not cluttered up with the bones of dead dwarves, mountains of orcs and goblins, and a large and fiery balrog. But there's still so much left to do. From this point, I will need to install the storage networks that will convey and store materials throughout the base, and I'll also need to start setting up the power sources I mentioned a few minutes ago. And of course, there are all the crafting and processing machines to build for which this space was specifically designed. However, the next episode will have none of that. As I said before, I've added a bunch of new mods to this world, but most of them aren't quite active yet, as they will live in newly created chunks. So I think it's time to go create some new chunks by expanding the known world from 2.5 kilometers in every direction to a full 5 kilometers in every direction. There will be plenty of exciting new structures and settlements to explore, and there will be untold riches and new resources to harvest and quite possibly bring back for farming on the estate. Of course, there will be all of the immersive engineering ore types that I will need to start effectively using the features of that mod. And of course, after digging out a very large underground space, it will be nice to be out and about in the sun. Even if there are strange new beasties and hostile peoples out there trying to put an eye out. Or worse. I will explore the smaller bits and mark the larger bits for more thorough exploration at some future point, but I'm really looking forward to it, and I hope you will join me on this little adventure. So with all that said, I hope this finds you and yours in good health, good spirits, and a touch of good fortune. Take care of yourselves out there. Cheers.